कौन कौन साउंड क्लियर होने हिसिंग साउंड हो
Namaskar, good morning to all of you.
वेरी गुड मॉर्निंग Thank you, Namaste.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of
Thank you so much. Thank you. Lakhon, ठीक है sir? Lakhon? Hello. Am I audible there?
Again, sir.
Okay. Okay. Respected Chief Patron and Registrar of Vikram Dev University, Dr. Gopal Haldar, CPCGC, Dr. K.C. Jena in absentia, Coordinator, Lieutenant Dr. Lakshmi Patra, Convener, Sri Francis Barla, Co-Speaker, Dr. Tapati Chakravartty of Binod Bihari Mahato, Koilancho, Dhanbad. Dear compatriots, dear students, both in the same and in the cloud chamber. I thank the head of the Department of Philosophy and his colleagues, the coordinator, the convener, and the registrar for inviting me to deliver this keynote address on the occasion of Indian Philosophy Day sponsored by ICPR New Delhi. The title I have given address is Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, the Ultimacy of Intuitive Knowledge. Last year, 2022, was the centenary year of publication of Professor Surendranath Das Gupta's History of Indian Philosophy Volume 1. I persuaded the philosophy departments of various colleges and universities in Odisha and the ICPR too to appropriately celebrate the occasion under the ICPR grant on the Indian Philosophy Day. I spoke here at Jeypore and in 2-3 more institutions on S.N. Das Gupta's contribution, and that was a very happy experience for me. In the process, I came to know many things about works of this wizard, Professor Das Gupta, that I did not know before. So I'm quietly celebrity in literature wrote a famous novel, No Hanyate, and his lover, a Romanian gentleman, scholar, wrote another book, The Bengali Nights. I think some person or other must have read these 2 books by now and appreciated what happened between the 2, Maitreyi Devi and Eliade, Mircea Eliade. These 2 books speak about the distinction between Indian culture and European culture. No Hanyate depicting Indian philosophy and culture, whereas Bengali Nights depicting the philosophy and culture of Europe. These 2 books are a must read for interested in the works of philosophy and in the works of Professor Das Gupta. Now, this year, 2023, is the centenary year of the publication of Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan's Indian Philosophy Volume 1. I have persuaded several colleges and this university as well to celebrate the occasion similarly, and this seminar is a result of that. I congratulate the Registrar Dr. Haldar, Lieutenant Dr. Lakman, and his extended department for paying their homage to the guide figure of Indian philosophy, knighted by the British government, awarded Bharat Ratna, Prof. Radharishnan. Let me begin in a populist tone with an Facebook post that I shared on 17th May last. It is a statement made by Ayn Rand. It reads, I quote, "There are philosophy majors who graduate without having taken a single course on Aristotle, except as part of general surveys." Stop, unquote. I repeat, there are philosophy majors who graduate without having taken a single course on Aristotle, except as part of general surveys. Unquote. I have added a remark, decadence everywhere. এটি কোটি বিশেষ কিছু পড়াপড়ি না, many branches of physical science. By not reading Aristotle, one misses many foundational ideas and the very basics of philosophy. At one time, I felt and made my students feel that before being awarded the master's degree in philosophy, he or she must have read the basic books on core philosophy, and on allied subjects, read books by Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan and by Bertrand Russell. There might be in my surrounding some exceptions who would be doing this. Prominent among Radhakrishnan's erudite works are, one has already enlisted some. Let me repeat that for the sake of information, all concerned. The Reign of Religion in Contemporary Philosophy, 1990. The Life, 1927. An Ideal View of Life, 1932. Religion, 1932. Eastern Religions and Western Thought, 1939. Religion and Society, 1947. The Present Crisis of Faith, 1960. Recovery of Faith, 1967. Our Heritage, 1973. His autobiography, My Search for Truth, 1956. Besides Indian philosophy in 2 volumes, he translated and edited the Principal Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Dhammapada. He edited many other books, the outstanding among which are Philosophy, Eastern and Western, that Government of India published, which also published President Radhakrishnan's speeches and writings, Contemporary Indian Philosophy with J.H. Moorehead, a source book in Indian philosophy which Charles Moore authored, The Concept of Man, a study in comparative philosophy with P.T. Raju. Then Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, a commemoration volume published in 1988 on the birth centenary of Radharishnan, a comparative study in philosophy, was presented in his honor 60th birthday. So 2 volumes on the 60th birthday one, and on his birth centenary, another volume was published. Radhakrishnan's language is very flowery and fluent. ଭାବଗମ୍ଭୀର, ବିଶେଷ ଭାବଗମ୍ଭୀର ତାଙ୍କ ଭାଷା। ତାଙ୍କ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଫିଲୋସଫି ଭଲ୍ୟୁମ୍ 1 ରୁ ଯାହାର ସେଣ୍ଟିନାରୀ ଆମେ ପାଳନ କରୁଛେ, ତାର ଓପନିଂ ଲାଇନ୍ସ କେତେ ଆମେ ପଢି ଦଉଛି, ସେଇଥିରୁ ଜଣା ପଡିବ ତାଙ୍କର କେତେ ଭାବଗମ୍ଭୀର ଭାଷା ଏବଂ କେତେ ଫୋର୍ସଫୁଲ persuasive language. Radhakrishnan writes like this: for thinking minds to blossom, for arts and sciences to flourish, the first condition necessary is a settled society providing security and leisure. This is the very first sentence of Indian Philosophy, Volume 1. For thinking minds to blossom, for arts and sciences to flourish, the first condition necessary is a settled society providing security and leisure. A rich culture is impossible with a community of nomads where people struggle for life and die of privation. Fate called India to a spot where nature was free with her gifts, and every prospect was pleasing. The Himalayas, with their immense range and elevation on one side, and the sea on the others, helped to keep India free from invasion for a long time. So philosophy and literature come combined in the writings of Radhakrishnan as well as of Russell. You know that Russell received Nobel philosophy. He was Nobel in literature. For this, I recommend all the ancillary books of Radhakrishnan to out the technologic age. The researches on artificial intelligence and applications of the findings thereof have begun creating havoc in the lives of people. With this, there is undeclared war situations and skirmishes at several places of the globe. Conditions is a creature written on the earth. Radhakrishnan was deeply perturbed to witness the ravages wrought failed in the Second World War, 1939 to 1945, and he also witnessed that to his utter dismay. He talks in all his books and lectures about human unity or human integration, which he thinks is the approximation of the English rendering for the Gita's term Lokasangraha, that seeks to usher in peace, amity, stability, and growth of human society. This is situating the lofty philosophical ideas posed by the human mind for all the earthlings. A person of spiritual attainment is one who can perceive things in 3 dimensions of time: past, present, and future. जे होची त्रिकालदर्शी, से होची फिलोसोफर, से होची गॉडली पर्सन, से होची ऋषि। जे कौन सी घटना घटुची तार पास्ट को एवं तार कुआड फ्यूचर तार कुआड जाउची, ए तीनटा जाको जदि से 360 डिग्री देखि पारला ताले से होची महान व्यक्ति। He is a person of pure, and we can regard Radhakrishnan to be such a person. Philosophy that includes logic, psychology, metaphysics, and religion is pure philosophy according to him. Pure philosophy underlines the significance of intuition as the mark of perfection and saturation of human knowledge that results in blissful life. That is Indian Philosophy, Volume 2, page 22. I seek to shed light on both of his thrusts, floodlighting the concept intuition, which is the cornerstone of his philosophy. But before that, let me state an interesting fact about Radhakrishnan's engagement with philosophy. Radhakrishnan came to philosophy not by choice but by chance. It is said that some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Choice of philosophy as his subject of study was thrust upon him. That thrust him philosophy, where he held many prestigious academic and state assignments, beginning with teaching of philosophy at Madras Presidency College. Finally, he was lifted to the status of a philosopher king, first Vice President of India and second President of India. In his own tongue, he says, I cannot say that I came to the study of philosophy as one dedicated from childhood to the service of the altar. I am not a philosopher because I could not help being one. I am not a philosopher because I could not help being one. Life, he says, life, says Dilthey. Dilthey is a German historian, is a mysterious open of chance fate character. Radharishnan quotes Dilthey to say that life is a mysterious fabric, open of chance, fate, and character. That philosophy became the subject of my special study. Was it a part of my destiny? Was it the result of my character? Or was it mere chance? He asks in this way. When he was 17 in the Madras Christian College and was vacillating about the choice of subject from out of the 5 options of mathematics, physics, biology, philosophy, and history, one of his cousins who took his degree that year passed on his textbooks in philosophy to him. Which books? G.F. Stout's Manual of Psychology, J. Welton's Logic in 2 volumes, and J. Mackenzie's Manual of Ethics. And that decided Radhakrishnan's future interest. To all appearance, this is a mere accident. But when I look at the series of accidents that have saved my life, I am persuaded that there is more in this life than meets the eye. There is more in this life that meets the eye. Life is not a mere chain of physical causes and effects. Chance seems to form the surface of reality, but deep down, other forces are at work. If the universe is a living one, if it is spiritually alive, nothing in it is merely accidental. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on. Niyati kotha kouchandi, it's unforeseen. Philosophy trained him both intellectually and spiritually all years. His conception of a philosopher was in some ways similar to that of Marx, who proclaimed that philosophy had hitherto been concerned with interpreting life, but the time had come for it to change life. Radhakrishnan writes, philosophy is committed to a creative task. So, in one sense, philosophy is a lonely pilgrimage of the spirit. In another sense, it is a function of life. It is not only a lonely pilgrimage of the spirit, but it is also a function of life. The world has become a single body, a global village now, but it feels for its soul. He puts the question straight. May we not prepare for the truth of the world's yet unborn soul by a free interchange of ideas and the development of a philosophy which will combine the best of European humanism and Asiatic religion? And he gives a straight answer that an Indian student may perhaps make a little contribution to the development of a world perspective in philosophy. He is very much sanguine, very much confident that an Indian student can do that. It is said proverbially that every Indian is a philosopher. The danger of all human occupation is present also in philosophy. He means the danger of accepting standard solutions and performing mechanically through sheer laziness and inertia the established modes of thinking. If we reach ready-made doctrines and see in any stream of thought perfection and completeness, we miss the true spirit of inquiry. If we think that something is a finished thing and it cannot be made better, then we are lost. We miss the true spirit of inquiry. There cannot be an authentic philosophical situation unless there is uneasiness about prevalent opinions. And we lose the capacity to doubt, we cannot get into the mood of philosophic thought. A.N. Whitehead's observation that life is an offensive against the repetitive mechanism of the universe is true of the philosophical life also, Radharishnan remarks. If we hold any philosopher as a guru, if we treat his work as gospel, if we make of his teaching a religion complete with dogma and exegesis, we may become his blind follower. Have the openness of mind essential for a critical understanding of the master's views. The true teachers help us to think for ourselves in the new situations which arise from time to time in the stream of life. We would be unworthy disciples if we do not question and criticize them. They try to widen our knowledge and help us to see clearly. The true teacher is like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, who advises Arjuna to think for himself and do as he chooses. Jatha ichchasi tatha kuru. A person lives tradition and instinctively live a life of the need for philosophy arises when faith in tradition is shaken. Radharishnan writes, India has had a long tradition and I grew up in it. I started therefore with a prejudice in its favor. This is from the commemoration volume. Radharishnan recounts that his teachers in Christian missionary institutions cured him of this faith and restored for him the primordial situation in which all philosophy is born. The primordial situation means when the mind is, so to say, a blank slate. The mind is devoid of and set beliefs. A critical study in Hindu religion was thus on him. Radharishnan, the great masters of thought, ancient and modern, Eastern and Western. But he was so independent-minded and not to be a blind believer, as not to be a blind believer, only accepting his teaching in its entirety. He admits that he is influenced by them, but his thought does not comply with any fixed traditional pattern. His thinking had another source and proceeded from his own experience. This is not quite the same as what is acquired by mere study and reading. It is born of a spiritual experience rather than deduced from logically ascertained premises. केवल श्रवण चलिब नाही श्रवण मनन and निदिध्यासन. These are the three stages which are recommended in our tradition, and Radhakrishnan hints at that. He says, philosophy is produced more by our encounter with reality than by the historical study of such encounters. In my writings, I have tried to communicate my insight into the meaning of life. I am not sure, however, that I have succeeded in conveying my inmost ideas. I tried to show that my general position provides a vivid interpretation of the world, which seems to me consistent with itself to accord with the facts as we know them and foster the life of spirit. Reality. Science aims at a systematic study of reality, but not the whole of it. It becomes a function of philosophy to reconcile the conclusion of sciences by delimiting their spheres of validity. The task of philosophy is to find out how far the premises assumed by the sciences are valid. The postulates of the sciences become problems of philosophy. The postulates of the sciences become the problems of philosophy. Philosophy cannot be carried on by mere logic. Philosophy is an interpretation of experience. We say that philosophy is a love of wisdom. But what is wisdom? One writer, W. Fengian, a Chinese scholar, very correctly explains, quote, wisdom is a mental capacity of combining intelligence to moral virtue in the process of gaining knowledge and acting. As we go on acting with our intelligence to acquire knowledge and do actions, the values go on being mingled with that. ଯେମିତି ତରକାରୀ ଡାଲି ତିଆରି କଲା ବେଳେ ଏଥିରେ ଆମେ ଲୁଣ ପକାଉ ଏବଂ ଲୁଣ ଯେମିତି ସେ ଡାଲିରେ ତରକାରୀରେ ଭଜାରେ ମିଶିଯାଏ, ସେଇଭଳି ଭାବରେ ମୋରାଲିଟି ଆଣ୍ଡ ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁଜ ଆମ ଜ୍ଞାନ ଏବଂ ଆମ କର୍ମ ତା ଦେହରେ ମିଶିଯାଏ, ମିଞ୍ଜିଯାଏ, ଏବଂ ଯଦି ମିଞ୍ଜିଲା ତାହେଲେ ସେଇଟା ହେଲା wisdom. Science is an intellect and is neutral. So, if we worship the positive facts of science exclusively, that would lead to what we may call scientific metaphysics, which is the worst kind of metaphysics. ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ମୁଁ ଯାହା ଲକ୍ଷ୍ୟ କରୁଛି, ବିଶେଷ କରି ଫେସବୁକରେ ସେ ଏଇ ପ୍ରକାର ସବୁ ଡଗମାଛନ୍ତି, ଯାହା ସବୁ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ସେଗୁଡା ହଉଛି କେବଳ ସାଇଣ୍ଟିଫିକ ମେଟାଫିଜିକ୍ସ ଡ୍ରଜ. Is not so much a conceptual reconstruction as an exhibition of insight. ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ କଥା. ଯୋଉ ଇଣ୍ଟୁସନ କଥା ଆମେ ଆଲୋଚନା କରୁଛେ, ଏଇଠି ତାର ରହିଲା ସବୁ ତାର ସୋର୍ସ. ସାଇଣ୍ଟିଫିକ ନଲେଜରେ କିପରି insight ଦରକାର କରୁଛି, insight ବିନା କେମିତି scientific knowledge incomplete ଅପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ରହୁଛି ସେଇଟା ସେ ଦେଖଉଛନ୍ତି. Philosophy is conceptual knowing and as such is a preparation for intuitive insight and exposition of it when it arises. Philosophy is distinct from science mainly because of its subject matter. But in analytical philosophy, AJR will not agree with that. AJR will say that philosophy is distinct from the sciences both in respect to subject matter and method. It attempts to study the whole of experience. Which one? Philosophy. Philosophy attempts to study the whole of experience, but part of experience is studied by sciences. Its method is the method of science taken to its logical extreme as indicated before, and more about this point we discussed below. In reply to critics, Radhakrishnan makes it clear that philosophy is a sustained attempt to understand the universe as a whole, not some part of it as sciences do. It takes into account the reports of the scientists, the intuitions of the artists, and the insight of the saints. If philosophy is to coordinate and interpret all significant aspects of experience, it must reckon with a religious experience also. Both religion and philosophy ask the why and wherefore of things. Both try to grasp the sum total of things and understand the ground of it all. Yet, the end in view is different. The end of religion is salvation of soul, but the end of philosophy is a discovery of truth. So, you must be marking how he is trying to uphold philosophy, then distinguish philosophy from science, and then distinguish philosophy from religion. A large systems of religion do not have immediate spiritual rising born of meditation. They take their religious views at second hand from prophets. They therefore do not inquire about the dicta and question the dictates. It thus becomes a system of dogmatics. While philosophy is a product of thought and inquiry, religion turns out to be a product of poetry and fancy. Philosophy answers the problem of the whole by logic, while religion answers it by faith. It was the mind. Radharishnan puts it very aptly. It warms the heart and silences the mind. True religion is independent of authority. It is based upon insight born of meditation. There is a need for logic and language for the expression of all knowledge, perceptual, conceptual, or intuitional. Knowledge of all sorts requires the use of concepts. The great truths of logic are not proved but seen. The great truths of logic are not proved but seen, intuited. The philosophers convey to others visions by the machinery of logical proofs. If intuitive knowledge does not supply us with universal measure premises, which we can neither question nor establish, then our life will come to an end. If knowledge depends for its validity on external criterion, then no knowledge is valid at all. If it depends for its validity on external criterion, then no knowledge is valid at all. So what is needed? It depends on internal criterion, which is intuition. Self-knowledge is self-validated. Radhakrishnan asserts that there is a reason beyond the body and the intellect. In a reason, the human spirit finds its expression in aspiration. It is called the soul of a being, the determining principle of body and mind. Religious experience is of a self-satisfying character. It is Swatasiddha. It carries its own credentials. But the religious seer is compelled to justify his inner convictions in a way that satisfies the thought of the age. If there is not this intellectual confusion, the attitude of seers is one of trust. Is there or is there not knowledge which by its nature cannot be expressed in propositions and is yet trustworthy? We know that for the Hindus, a system of philosophy is an insight. We know that for the Hindus, a system of philosophy is an insight. That is darshana. It is a vision of truth and not a matter of logical argument and proof. So there is a very subtle difference between philosophy is the love of wisdom, and I have already defined what wisdom is. Now, it is different from darshan. Darshan is direct encounter with the truth. It is a vision of truth and not a matter of logical argument and proof. The great illustration of intuitive knowledge given by Hindu thinkers is the knowledge of self. Radhakrishnan explains that if the term knowledge is restricted to what is communicable, to what can be expressed in formulas and propositions, then intuitive insight as ineffable and non-propositional cannot be termed as knowledge. But certainty and non-combinability are the two tests of knowledge. An intuitive experience has this sense of assurance or certainty and therefore a species of knowledge. So intuitive experience is also a species of knowledge. He clarifies it in an idealist view of life. Intuitive truths are simple acts of mental origin and are free from doubts. Logical knowledge is non-knowledge that is valid only till intuition arises. When intuition arises, then logic goes to the back seat. The logical and the intuitive are useful for their own specific purposes. Logical knowledge enables to know the conditions of the world in which we live and to control them for our ends. But if we want to know things in their uniqueness and in their indefeasible reality, then we must transcend discursive thinking. Direct perception or simple and steady looking upon an object is intuition. Direct perception or simple and steady looking upon an object is intuition. It is not a mystic process, but is a Gnostic one. Gnostic, Gnostic. Gnostic means concerning knowledge. Gnostic one. According to Shankara, Anubhavarudham evacha vidya phalam. The fruits of knowledge is manifest to knowledge of intuition. Shankara calls it aparokshanubhuti, and Bergson says it indicates a higher immediacy. The immediacy of intuitive knowledge can be mediated through intellectual definition and analysis. We use intellect to test the validity of intuition and communicate them to others. Intuition and intellect are complementary to each other. We have to recognize, of course, that intuition transcends the conceptualized expressions because reality does not fit into categories. Human awareness, according to Radhakrishnan, is broadly of three kinds: the perceptual, the logical, and the intuitive. Human awareness is of three kinds. Perceptual, logical, and intuitive. They belong respectively to manas or sensitive mind, vijnana or logical intelligence, and ananda or spiritual intuition. So, perceptual knowledge belongs to sensitive mind, and the logical belongs to the intelligence, and intuitive belongs to spiritual intuition. All three belong to human consciousness. The human mind functions in unison, not in fractions. The word intuition originates from the Latin intuitus, I-N-T-U-I-T-U-S, intuitus. It implies sense of sight used to cover all cognitive processes which have a directness or immediacy, that is, to all non-inferential cognitions. Intuition is of two kinds: perceptual knowledge and integral insights. Radhakrishnan uses the term intuition for integral knowledge. Reason and intuition are interdependent. In this connection, we may compare Bradley's immediate perception, Descartes' clear light of reason, Spinoza's adequacy, and Wittgenstein's showing. So all these Western thinkers had a glimpse of what Radhakrishnan is telling about the Indian tradition, but they were not fully aware of it. Science seeks to establish that the world is a closed system in which everything is determined in terms of cause and effect. But it has not done that. It has not succeeded in that. History is the sphere of the unpredictable and incalculable. Perception gives the outward properties of an object. Intellect discusses the laws of which the object is an instance, whereas intuition gives depth, meaning, character to the object. Science and philosophy had a common origin in India and the West. The seer and the scientist were the same in the Vedic ashramas. In the West, what is now called science was called natural philosophy till 1840. A division was created later on between science and technology on the one hand and religion and ethics on the other. Thus, an antagonism between faith versus reason and techniques versus ethics came to be there. This is a split in consciousness. This is the cause of disorder of the present time. Modern specialization leads to fragmentation of knowledge. Max Planck, the celebrated scientist, Max Planck says, quote, "Science cannot solve the ultimate mystery of nature. That is because, in the last analysis, we ourselves are parts of nature, and therefore part of the mystery we are trying to solve. The most penetrating eye cannot see itself any more than a working instrument can work upon itself." ଗୋଟେ ଚିମୁଟା ନିଜକୁ ଚିମୁଟେଇକି ଧରିପାରିବନି। ଯେମିତି ରାଇଲ ବି ଗୋଟେ ଉଦାହରଣ ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି, ନିଜ ଜୋତାର ଯୋଉ ଫିତା ଲାଗିଛି ସେ ଫିତାକୁ ଧରିକି ଆମେ ନିଜକୁ ନିଜେ ଟେକି ପାରିବାନି। ସେଇଭଳି ଭାବରେ ସାଇନ୍ସ ନିଜର ମିଷ୍ଟେକ୍ ନିଜେ ସଲ୍ଭ କରିପାରିବନି. It has to be transcended, and it has to come to philosophy for the full and complete understanding of itself. That there is an ultimate principle underlying and informing the cosmic process is not only inferred but also intuited. Experiment is not limited to facts in space and time. We have experiments of laws of nature, of logical universals, and of ultimate reality as well. The soul's direct contact with full awareness of transcendent reality is a basic postulate of both Eastern and Western thought. Wittgenstein says that logic pervades the world. Contrary to this, Radhakrishnan says that what rules events in the world is not logic, but human nature. The function of civilization is not to produce robots that carry out the direction of any mad dictator. If science tells us anything, it is this, that the human individual is an active agent, a doer, a creator. He is not a pawn of fate. Bhagyastra khelana nuhe. He is a slave of necessity. A race suicide by accident or race slaves by design is not the fate of man. It is to grow in greatness. ନିଜର ସମସ୍ତ କ୍ଷମତା ମେସିନ୍ ହାତରେ ଦେଇ ହାତ ଗୋଡ଼ ଜାକି ବସିବା ମଣିଷର ଭବିତବ୍ୟ ନୁହେଁ. Intuitive knowledge is verified by its capacity to bring coherence and harmony into systems framed by the intellect. The immediacy of intuitive knowledge can be mediated through intellectual definition and analysis as stated above. We use the intellect and test the validity of intuition and communicate them to others. Intuition and intellect are complementary, as I said. Intuition is direct experience. The immediacy of Western thinkers is not an unmediated one. The Vedas embody the intuitions of the perfected souls. They record the spiritual insights of select souls, rishis, who have deeply meditated on the totality of experience and have struck with insights about the same. The truths revealed in them are capable of being re-experienced by anybody doing meditation with ascertained conditions. Hence, Vedic truths are said to be apaurushaya. That is, what does apaurushaya mean? They belong to no person. So if they belong to no person, it must belong to every person and any person who can do the meditation with ascertained conditions. Science and technology, without aiming at this result, have achieved the unity of the world. Currencies are linked, commerce is globalized, and political fortunes are interdependent. The world is in the open, continuous with our backyard, as it were. ସତେମିତି ସାରା ଦୁନିଆଟା ଆମ ବାରିପଟରେ ଗୋଟେ ମାର୍କେଟ ହେଇକି ବସିଛି କି? ଆଙ୍ଗୁଳି ଟିପି ଦେଲେ ଜିନିଷ ପଳେଇ ଆସୁଛି, ଖାଇବା ଜିନିଷ ବି. And yet the sense that mankind must become a community is still a causal whim, a vague aspiration not generally accepted as a conscious ideal or an urgent practical necessity, moving us to feel the dignity of a common citizenship and the common duty. Religion is an intrinsic element in human nature. The question is therefore not religion or no religion, but what kind of religion? There is no option between religion and no religion, but there is always option between this religion or that religion. The spirit of science leads to the refinement of religion. All religions are rooted in experience. Experience is not limited to the data perception or introspection. Paranormal phenomena and spiritual states. All religions require us to look upon life as opportunity for self-realization. Atmanastu kamaya. Religion depends on lokasangraha or solidarity of human society. Radhakrishnan's observation of Hinduism is very important. Hinduism is not an historical religion like Christianity or Islam. Hinduism does not have any set and definite belief that mark of other religions. So it is not a religion alongside of other religions in this sense. In Hinduism, intellect is subordinated to intuition, dogma to experience, outer expression to inward realization. It is insight into the nature of reality, darsana, or experience of reality, anubhava. To remake society, we have to remake ourselves. Humanities, which cover art and literature, philosophy and religion, are as important for human welfare as science and technology. Bacon warned us that he who that will not apply new remedies must expect new evils. Under the influence of science and technology, which is increasing day by day, religion is transformed into a messianic materialism. हम सब बाबा अछंदी गुरु माने अछंदी से सब जहा कहउछंदी आमे ताको पूरा पूरी पी जाउछु से होची messianic materialism से उडाको. Science casts skeptical doubts on discipline of religion. Wisdom and counsel would have to be appealed to, applied to alter the worst situation to the better. Science will win over ignorance and superstitions, and religion over selfishness and fear. Faith is related to reason. Science, philosophy, and religion all attempt to reveal the truth, which is ultimately one and all-inclusive. We cannot have different truths covering the same ground. Religion is the name for man's total conscious attitude towards life as it is found and enlightened by rational awareness and knowledge. We must preserve the precious substance of religious reality by translating it out of the modes and thoughts of other times into terms and needs of our own day and generation. सबबेले जो मूल्यवान कथा गुड़िक यूनिवर्सल गुड़िक निज निज एज इडियम रे ट्रांसलेट होगा था निज निज एज थॉट एवं एक्शन रे ट्रांसलेट होगा कथा ताहले जायकरी तार शाश्वत पणिया जाहि रे परिबो एवं आमे महान हे परिबा. Like a sage seer, Radhakrishnan says that the prominent feature of our time is not so much the wars and dictatorship which have disfigured it, but the impact of different cultures on one another, their interaction and emergence of a new civilization based on the truths of spirit and the unity of mankind. The world is the home of the fallen man. A good tree brings forth good fruits. Our society is not sick beyond saving, for it suffers from divided loyalties and conflicting urges from altering modes of exaltation and despair. Man is an unfinished being. Manushya sampurna hai nahi. He has to grow into a regenerated being and permit the currents of universal life to flow through him. We must preserve the precious substance of religious reality by translating it out of the modes and thoughts of the other times into terms and needs of our own day and generation. In concluding, let me say that Radhakrishnan attaches great importance to spiritual education. He thinks that education which does not inculcate spiritual feelings in students is not incomplete and is not complete, and it is harm. Sham means counterfeit. Without spiritual attitude, the physical and the intellectual growth of a person is stunted. This situation is detrimental to the progress of mankind. The meaning of education is to emancipate the individual, and we need the education of the whole man, physical man, vital man, mental man, intellectual man, and the spiritual man. Education should enable one to imbibe attitude of simple living and high thinking. Any satisfactory system of education should aim at a balanced growth of the individual and insist on both knowledge and wisdom. Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam. Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam, that is our aim. So thank you very much, one and all, for your rapt attention to whatever I said during the past 1 hour or nearly so. Thank you very much. Over to Lakshman. There are some quotations from Radhakrishnan. They have given quotations. So in and through language, we can do that. I have told you time and again that what is intuited is expressed in and through language. So it is the language and the use of concepts that will say that will bring out the difference, which I have tried to do in the length and breadth of my talk. Mm-hmm. The importance lies in bringing our knowledge, which is born of science, to completion and perfection. That is its importance. Without intuition, without intuitive knowledge, all other knowledge are imperfect and incomplete. ଆଉ କଣ ଅଛି? ଠିକ ଅଛି. Now there is another question. Another question is there. What is the difference between perceptual awareness and perceptual intuition? Bharat na? Ke pachari jane? So perception is of two kinds: external and internal. External perception is ordinary perception, and perception which is done by the scientists, and the internal perception is done by intensive meditation done by the rishis, which signals holistic thinking, not partial thinking and segmental thinking. That is the difference. वेदरे जहाँ सब कहुई से सब जगह इंट्यूटिव नॉलेज वेदरे जहाँ सब कहुई सब जगह इंट्यूटिव नॉलेज जो कहली ज्ञान विज्ञान सहितम से गोटे इंट्यूटिव नॉलेज जमी कहुई आत्मनस्तु बोध है ना कौन कहली गोटे इंट्यूटिव नॉलेज तो जहाँ सब कहुई सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन विषय सब जगह इंट्यूटिव नॉलेज एनी नॉलेज कंसर्निंग self and self-realization is intuitive knowledge. So thank you all the questioners.
sir. Pranam. A very good morning to all. And first of all, I am very privileged and honored to be a part of this ICPR sponsored 2 days seminar on the occasion of Indian Philosophers Day. Thank you so much for the invitation. And that also celebrating the centenary of Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, Indian philosophy. My respect and pranam to Professor Ganesh Prasad Das sir, who I consider to be one of the pillars of philosophy. Pranams. Respected Chief Patron, Dr. Gopal Haldar sir, Registrar of Vikram Dev University, respected Patron, Dr. K.C. Jaina sir, Chairperson, Music Council, Vikram Dev University, respected Convener sir, Shri Francis Barla sir, Head, PG Department of Philosophy of Vikram Dev University, and respected Coordinator sir, Dr. Lakshman Batra sir, in the Department of Philosophy, Vikram Dev University, and all the respected speakers around, respected professors, respected principals, all present for the seminar, and my most beloved research scholars and students around. It is a great pleasure and an honor to me to speak on this occasion of Indian Philosophers Day. Thank you so much for the invitation. Am I audible? Am I audible, sir?
Very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Dr. Radhakrishnan, a builder of a great civilization, commensurate with new climate of thinking action. Now, Dr. Radhakrishnan is an authoritative thinker in Indian philosophy. The depth and the comprehensiveness of the knowledge which he commands and the scholarship which he expresses in lucid language in the field of study are the characteristics of Dr. Radhakrishnan. He aims not just interpreting Indian thoughts to his countrymen alone, but to the world at large. Dr. Radhakrishnan is one among the thinkers who changed, revolutionized our thinking concerning a new way of life, inculcated by the real founders of the civilization. And born a Hindu, he was not a sectarian thinker, but a man of universal mind, universal ideas. And all through his life, he has spoken from a platform not only of Hinduism, but that of Christianity, the Catholic Protestant branch, of the Islamic faiths, Zoroastrianism, Sufism, and many others. And well grounded in thought, both West and the East, he could expound the Western cultural traditions, civilizations to the East, and Eastern cultural traditions, civilizations to the West. So he was the most competent authority in philosophy who can unite the Western cultural traditions to East and Eastern to the West. And he was also held as a cultural bilingualist, teaching eternal ideas and ideals of East to West and West to East. So, don't you think the function that Dr. Radhakrishnan fulfills today is that of a liaison officer? If you turn around the pages of Counterattacks from the East, that is a book by C.E.M. Joad, where he writes, I quote, he seeks to build a bridge between the traditional wisdom of the East and new knowledge and energy of the West, so that each may be enriched by the qualities of the other. Again, Dr. Radhakrishnan repeatedly insists on this great phenomenon taking place in our time to effect a new change in our thinking and behavior. We cannot be narrow, parochial, narrow, passionless. We have to look to the whole world, whole humanity as one unit, one family, develop in ourselves that universality. And so this responsibility is for greater magnitude. Its dimensions are multiple, and as such, no sphere of our life should be remained unaffected by this universality of the outlook. In former days, countries, nations were unknown to each other. There was no contact between them. But now we find the world is no better than a small corner of a vast universe, and therefore living together in peace and harmony is most unavoidable responsibility that has been through. Dr. Radhakrishnan is of the view that such a global outlook must be cultivated among each of us. It is not only on the practical level, but theoretical too. He insisted on a through-going change in our ways of thinking, because thinking precedes action. There is no activity that is not preceded by deep thought. Now, our culture, traditions, civilizations are the consequences of a deep thought. So, as thought is at the root, so it is necessary to concentrate on the different sources of our civilization and religions of the world, and attempt to find out the universal elements in them. And without unity at the theoretical level, there can be nothing on the practical level. And only this is the hope of achievement on the practical level. The broad common feature of all civilizations, cultural traditions, can emerge by a deep study of them, with this motive in mind. To put in the words of Dr. Radhakrishnan, this is from his book, Eastern Religion and Western Thought. I quote, "To penetrate to the heart of civilization, we ought to study its secret springs of thought, its religious idols. Religion has been from the beginning a bearer of it. It is the supreme achievement of man's profound experience. It is the deepest kind of life, reflecting the different phases, complex and conflicting, of human life. Millions of mind, their thoughts and dreams, put in relation." Unquote. So man is a complex being. He says he is a body spirit complex. Mind coming within the bodily space, dominant on the surface, not the spirit that sets. Dr. Radhakrishnan refers to spirit as the highest reality immanent in man. Because failure to distinguish between the highest essence from physical constructions, he feels that man's attention cannot be fixed and concentrated on the spirit. And Dr. Radhakrishnan's conviction is that Indian philosophy is idealist. And idealism is more defensible, theoretically more sound, more consistent than other trends of naturalism and materialism. And its additional merit is that it provides a theoretical foundation for religious and moral values. And the arguments that he advances in support of this view is not only logically convincing, but religiously appealing too. Dr. Radhakrishnan maintains that idealism requires that all finite objects should look beyond themselves to something which is inexplicable in the logical terms. The spirit in man, as I said, is characterized as self-consciousness and is a prelude in apprehending that universal spirit, because the same spiritual truth flows into them. It's like intuiting all is all in us and us in all. That is what he asserts. And the basic tenet of idealism is to hold the supremacy of mind over all forms of matter. where we have seen the Western idol as stopping at mind, calling it ultimate reality. Dr. Radhakrishnan us to go beyond thoughts of the spirit. Says, of the two, the spirit in man is the basic. So spiritual absolute idealism finds favor with him. Yes, Dr. Radhakrishnan agrees with the Indian philosophical view that its spirit or spirituality is the supreme value, and it prefers, or it follows that effort should be made for its realization. It's not merely a theoretical establishment of the reality of the spirit as an aim of Indian philosophical systems, but its realization or embodiment in life is equally emphasized as a purpose of human life. Again, we have seen that in Indian tradition, spirit or soul finds a prominent or central status in thinking. Out of the two ends from which philosophical thinking commences, from external or internal, Indian thinking starts with internal, introspective soul consciousness and considers it to be the ultimate truth, which amounts to the spiritual or idealistic view of it. Again, this changing, perishable mortal body is considered not simply carrying no importance. Again, biological propensities are looked down upon as hindrances to spiritual life. But Dr. Radhakrishnan does not agree with those philosophers, religious thinkers, that empirical nature of man is illusory, and therefore it must be annihilated with its instincts. Rather, he believes that it constitutes an important aspect of life. Physical constitutes an aspect of the soul. To put in his words, I quote from his book, Bhagavad Gita, the realm of the spirit is not cut off from the realm of life. To divide a man into outer desire and inequality is to violate the integrity of man. The two orders of reality, that is, the transcendent and the empirical, are closely related. So Dr. Radhakrishnan considers that the empirical aspect of man is a stage. It is a milestone or an aid to rise and to realize the infinite nature. Look, the question can come in mind, that is, but why? As an answer to this, we have it with us from him, from Dr. Radhakrishnan, that is determined as the empirical man is with the external environment, all the psychological conditions and whatever. He thinks to transcend it. And this he calls as a theological longing. In the midst of the comforts that we are provided with, science also has given us, this man finds himself restless, restless, bored by the mechanical way of social things. Ills of this, Dr. Radhakrishnan feels that he wanted man look for peace and rest in external things, forgetting his own manness, his real self. Again, Dr. Radhakrishnan terms this one as dehumanization of man. That is, unnatural picture of man, unsatisfied by the scientific explanation. Empirical man is ever aware of his limitations. But at the same time, he is aware of his capacity also to intude the divinity within him And in this context, I'm reminded of his oft-quoted saying, as he used to say, I quote, if a man becomes a demon, it's a defeat of man. If a man becomes a man, it's a victory of man. Man becomes a superman, it's a miracle. So he believed that by exercise of free choice and act of freedom, one can raise himself to a great spiritual height. To have that mystic experience by moral corrections, yogic disciplines, in the form of saints or sannyasis, but not sannyasis, so-called sannyasis, striving and God-fearing, truthless people, but classes the sages of Upanishad, Shankaracharya, Buddha, in the category of the Superman in whom the radiance of spirituality finds full expression. But this stage is not easy to attain, and therefore he calls a miracle, but it is possible. He says there's only one, I'm quoting him, as he said, there's only one idol for man to make himself profoundly human, perfectly human, whole man, complete man, divine man. He's seeking for the highest and most. Self is seeking for God. Self-discovery, self-fulfillment is man's destiny. But the question always comes to mind, is it possible in this world? Because the present age we know, people are materialistic, running after acquiring object that is supposed to give a pleasurable life, never a happy life. And in this rat race of acquiring economic prosperity, we are forgetting what the ethical values, religious values, social values are. We are oblivious of these values. But how to restore it? We need a solution to it. How can that be done? How can we proceed? That is cultivation of a finer quality. What is that finer quality that Radharishnan says? Spirituality in man. Dr. Radhakrishnan's whole thinking was centered around the elevation and development of inherent spirituality in man. So spirituality is an absolute value, he says. And that is the reason, he says, reluctance to accept anything that is spiritual by the scientific temper of modern man. We get to see a crisis, division of men, economics, political, dogmatic, religious values. These are the ills of the world. And that results in lack of peace and happiness in the world and so in man's life. But the question always comes to man, but why? How can? Is there any solution to it, or why it so happens? Dr. Radhakrishnan says that it is because we are holding a vitiated material view of life, which is able to touch only the empirical and never the internal spiritual reality that has the capacity to bind man and man, spirit, nature, finite spirit, infinite spirit, and discern that spiritual oneness in all. Because it is about one, I want to conclude with the words of Dr. Radhakrishnan. As he said, I quote, "It is good to know that the ancient thinkers required us to realize the possibilities of soul in solitude and silence. and transform the flashing and the fading moments of vision into the steady light which can illumine the long years of life. I end up with a prayer. Asatuma satkamaya tamasuma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritamgamaya. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Lead me from unhealed to truth. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to life. Peace, peace, peace be bestowed to all. Thank you so much. Thanks for patient hearing and giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Over to Lokman.
No, do not say like that. Yes. Very nice question. Thank you so much.
No. Lokman. There are some questions in the chat box. I have already replied in the chat box. I have already replied to those questions in the chat box. In the meantime, concerning intuition. If there are any questions to Madam Chakravartty, then you read them.
Madam, I have a question. As you mentioned in your lecture, that empirical nature of man is illusory, and sometimes we feel that in our day-to-day life, because we have a great legacy of Radharishnan,
Yes.
and definitely his thought or his idea is highly spiritual. But coming to the present life, we see many chaos in our society and in the entire world or nation.
Very true.
Just I want to know that what are the idea that to find out the true nature of man. As you mentioned that there is the man, the absolute nature of man is spiritual. So can you just
Sure. Thank you so
enlighten
much
in
for
this
the
point?
question. Thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, he considers the empirical aspect of man as an aid to rise and realize the spiritual nature. Yes, that gives somehow, yes, that gives a feeling as if we have to renounce everything and reside there in some desert area or a solitude to realize this. But for that also, Dr. Radhakrishnan has replied. He has said, we need not flee from the world of work just to slay your ego sense. Eternal life is here and now. Unquote. So this is Dr. Radhakrishnan's reply. So it is not very difficult to do that. Rather, here spirituality has the absolute value. Dr. Radhakrishnan holds that spiritual orientation is the greatest need of the hour. For it alone, not anything that's have its what to say relative values like economics, politics, whatever that lays stress on relative values can usher in this era of peace, happiness, friendliness, fellow feeling all over the world. What we find all over the world is selfish barbarism instead of civilization. Until and unless we distinguish between the material and the spiritual values and our ways of thinking is anchored into the greatness and sublimating of the spirit, there is no hope to be liberated from the trammels of wild behavior that we get to see rampant world over. You're very true, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
ଲକ୍ଷ୍ମଣ ରାଜନନ୍ଦିନୀ ଆଉ ସ୍ୱାତି ଦିଟା କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚିନ୍ ପଚାରିଛନ୍ତି, ତାଙ୍କୁ ପଚାର।
Not audible. Sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. Is there any other question?
Now, perhaps that question is not clear. Perhaps that question is not clear. Let her put the question. Ask her, Rajanandini.
Sorry. Yes, please. Can you repeat the question once again? Educational implication. The whole thing is educative only. That is how he educates, because he stresses on spirituality. It is through spiritual, because after all, what education gives you? To live in a society and yet also be stress-free and be in a peaceful society. Again, as you are a part to it, you also should have the same kind of living. And that is the reason he has stressed on spirituality. The question was not very clear, but I don't know whether your thirst is quenched or not with the answer. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. The same. Whether you listen to me physically or over the clouds, the same thing. Mhm. मैडम को डाको जयपुर मैडम को कोयलांचल जयपुर डाको नाइस
Yes, even I'll feel better if I go there. Definitely. The sir is there. I would like to touch his feet too. That is another thing that I'll get. Definitely, I'll be there.
थैंक यू नमस्ते पुनर्दर्शनाय पुनः
Thank
श्रवणाय
you so much. Thanks a lot. Yes. Sure, sure. Looking forward. Looking forward. Thank you so much.
लिंक प्रोवाइड कलस ना से फुल टे देल नहीं चा टिके देल नहीं किछि देल नहीं नाइ नाइ से जा कहला ठीक कहला जे जदि जदि मंत्री महाशय दिल्ली रे बसिकरी एठी बालेश्वर रोड रो शिलान्यास करि परचोंती आम ये बस कहीं तुम चा पी पारूँ तुम फूल नहीं पारूँ जे उद्घाटन गोटे कथा है रिमोट शिलान्यास केमती हो मुझे बुझीपार केमी से पथर टाक ना इटा टाक केमी तुम थोक सिमेंट देल शिलान्यास केमी कल शिलान्यास ना रिमोट रे हो ठीक अच्छे आम सेमती तुम फूल तुम चाह ग्रहण कलु आ थैंक यू वेरी मच thank you so much. Thank you.
That's true.
Great of you. Nice of you. Thank you. पुणी काली भेट हम काली भेट हम